The Institute for Race Relations has released a report revealing, in their own words, that there is a scope for significant improvements in South Africa's notoriously deficient education system. The most significant outcome of the report reveals that some of the best township schools point the way to overhauling education. To tell us more about the report is John Kane-Berman, who is a policy fellow at the Institute for Race Relations. Welcome. Good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Talk to us about this research that you did, how it worked and the kind of scope of schools looked at.
Well, we were convinced that the overall figures on education pass rates, matric pass rates, bachelor pass rates, concealed a lot of successes because the overall figures are averages. And we decided to find out which were the most successful township schools and to go and interview the principals of the schools to find out the secrets of their success.
Yeah.
And we got a list of schools from the Department of Education in Gauteng, and we also looked at the press, identified a dozen or so township schools, phoned up the principals and went to talk to them and asked them why they believed they achieved pass rates so much higher than in the run-of-the-mill public schools.
Yeah. So here we go. Let's find out what the findings are. I mean, what sets them apart from other schools?
The key thing, I think, with any school, as with any organization, is the principal. And I found that the principals I interviewed were highly motivated. They were able to motivate their teachers. They imposed strict disciplinary rules in the schools. They didn't allow latecomers into the school when the gates were shut. Yeah. Teachers were expected to be on time, and pupils were invariably expected to wear school uniforms as part of the disciplinary process. So the most important thing we found was the character, the personality of the principal.
Yeah, it's incredible because, I mean, I think that just goes with the old principle that children love boundaries, children love rules, and rules need to be obeyed. I mean, people thrive underneath that, but particularly children. And again, this is proving that theory right.
That's exactly what we found. And we found also that teachers needed to know the rules, and teachers needed to know what was required of them. And if teachers were encouraged, and teachers were subject to a disciplinary process as well, they came to work on time. They put in extra time over the weekends. They came early in the mornings. They stayed after class. None of the teachers in these very poor township schools, which are no-fee schools that we went to visit, receive any extra pay. So the principal has to find ways of motivating and encouraging them other than by giving them huge pay rises, because there isn't the money to do that.
Yeah. So we look again at this, and so these results are out of this pilot study of 12 top-scoring schools in Gauteng. So 4 independent schools and 8 public schools. 5 of the public schools were no-fee township schools in communities classified by the department as too poor to be allowed to charge fees. And this is representative of some 88% of South Africa's almost 24,000 public schools. So those no-fee schools are the example, very much so, of predominantly the biggest amount of schools. Now, those schools, let's look quite deeply at those schools. The best performing schools, no fees, although you have an issue with no fee.
Well, I think that parents should be encouraged to pay something to get involved in the success of the school. If parents have money in the game, they will have a greater incentive to ensure that schools work. If teachers don't show up on time, if teachers disappear on Friday afternoons at 1 o'clock and don't participate in any kind of after-school activities, the parents who are paying good money towards the school can take action. If teachers don't show up at 7 or 8 in the morning, whatever the time is, the parents can go to their houses and make sure that the next day the teacher will be at school on time, or else there will be penalties.
Yeah, so holding more accountability and that in turn you believe will be one of the solutions, is to try and pay a little bit. I mean, the amount that you're saying is earmarking a part of a child support grant of 350 Rand per month for a child up to 18 Rand for school fees. What would you guesstimate? I mean, as a part of that fee, what would you think would be a fair amount?
100 Rand, 150 Rand. I mean, that's only one suggestion. The key point is to get the parents to be involved to a much greater extent than is the case in the run-of-the-mill township schools at the moment in the education of their children.
Yeah.
Parents of schools that are able to charge fees have a vested interest in making sure that they get a return on their investment. They want good results. They want teachers on time. They want decent sports fields. They want libraries and laboratories equipped. It gives them an incentive to get performance out of the principal and of all the teachers.
When you look at the key differences between these schools that you surveyed, obviously it's a small segment, but as you say, I mean, there's so much and no more you can look into. What were the greatest differences when you look at these no-fee paying schools and these great top-performing private schools here in Gauteng? You know, what is it? Where is that gap and that divide, particularly when it comes to attitude?
Well, one key difference is that the township schools are all accessible by dirt roads and the suburban schools have tar roads. The township schools have very little in terms of sports fields and laboratories and gardens and swimming pools. The suburban schools do have those facilities. But the key thing that contributes to success is that the suburban schools are able to use the fees in order to employ additional teachers. And some of the schools might have 30 teachers paid for by the department. They will have another 20 teachers paid for by the fees collected by the school governing body. So you have a lower pupil-teacher ratio, and you see that in the results that the suburban schools are able to produce.
Yeah.
Extra teachers are critically important.
Yeah.
And I think around the country, there's something like 34 billion rand spent on the salaries of extra teachers in schools that are able to charge fees to parents.
Yeah.
It makes a critical difference.
It certainly does. It's an interesting report. I imagine it's on the website of the Institute of Race Relations. People want to read it. I hope so too. It's called, well, I'm reading it there, Achievement and Enterprise in School Education.
Correct.
It was put together by our guest here. If you'd like to read the full report, which is really, really interesting, I must say, some great findings coming out of there. John Kane-Berman, he is a policy fellow at the Institute for Race Relations, talking to us about this report, and go onto their website and you'll be able to download it, no doubt. We'll see you after this with the news at 7. Do stay tuned.